Hello, Stanley. Thank you for joining us. As you know, we regard you as a very important printmaker, so it's an honour to have this chat and look forward to some of your comments on the printmaking show at Railway Street, Towards Strangeness.
I'll talk about that, but I will talk about my monoprinting, which I know
yes,
more than most people.
You do indeed. How can you tell the difference between an original print and a reproduction?
Well, it's become very, very confused because of the high quality of the jet ink prints that they print onto good paper. So a lot of the photographers use that process to blow their work up to a big scale instead of, it's very easy to do that. And machine screen printing, most screen printing now is done on a machine, so they can print, you could actually print thousands if you want to. The Artwright prints a lot of screen prints for artists, and they only print a limited amount, mainly because of the cost of the paper. And I have actually with them, I've printed onto linen, which was a whole nother process.
Wow.
And we had to use fabric inks, and it was very difficult to get them registered, as you can imagine. Anyway, go on to the next question, my dear. Just very confused, and the only thing you can do, you can just have to go into, I'll talk about it later, about how you go into how they were made.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
Because they're often giclée prints, and they've been editioned and signed like a...
Yes. And when those Ginty, they say that they use permanent inks and things, but they haven't got, they have to have the commercial control. It's a bit like cooking. If you're a really great cook, you'd make your own things up rather from the ingredients, rather than rely like curries. You'd make up your own curry thing paste, but you wouldn't use a commercial one. Or tomatoes, you wouldn't just tip in a tin of tomatoes.
Yes.
Et cetera. So it's very like that. The more you can have hands-on. I have actually got dry powders in my studio. I used to have vermilion mercuric sulfide, which is extremely expensive, but I use that for very light pinks and things that I knew that would be exposed, and they were permanent. They haven't faded. Usually that's how people looked after the paper that has done the most harm to my prints. Okay, go on to the next question.
And why buy a print and not a painting? Why would people start their collection and print with print?
Well, I'll just carry on a bit about that before I get into that. Artist prints have a long tradition, and it goes back, goes back to engraving onto metals, and they actually etched onto metals to do things like decoration things like guns, and they etched them first as a way before they engraved them, and then they started to print. And of course it's all tied up with woodcuts and book printing, so the prints come out of that long tradition. Prints have why they buy them, just prints have a wider audience. They reach out in a sort of to a more democratic, I say to the great unwashed, which is, well, it's a term that was used in English Parliament. No one quite knows where it came from. But I always ring up my friends if I want an opinion on something. I said, I want the opinion of the great unwashed. Would you come around and tell me what you think?
I think looking at it too, the different processes and on the paper is... Yes,
well, also, it's a thing that's made. I'll get into that. It's a made object, like jewelry, and the making is whole. In fact, it's a thing that's probably gone out in painting, but paintings were made objects. So they were made up very carefully, and even scientific analysis can't really work out how they were made, and they're often wrong because they've got early oil painting, but it was actually stand oil that they used, very sticky seed oil. So if you get those early impressionists, even the early Manets and Baudin, the brush strokes are very pointed because the ink was very far more tacky than what. But when you do analysis, stand oil and linseed oil are exactly the same, because if linseed oil with sun, it's going to turn into stand oil.
It takes the yellow away, is it? Is it?
No, they used to stand in the sun till it became thicker. They make it artificially now. Yes,
Okay.
the demo, it's a wider audience. Very like, early on it was books started to be to a wider audience, and then they started printing things like playing cards, things like that. And so that was to a wider audience, more democratic, useful. They were useful objects. And I suppose if you can look at printmaking and say they're more useful objects, because people haven't bought them usually for an investment. They've bought them to look at. Hopefully they don't. Often they don't treat them very, very well, unfortunately. You know, they expose them to light and to dampness, which New Zealand dampness is a bad thing.
Why do artists make prints? You're also like a painter and a printmaker. So why do artists from other fields make prints? Because there's a long history of that, isn't there?
Usually it's traditionally, it was a people that were very fluid with different processes. Gauguin could do anything. He could carve. You look at Degas, he could do anything. He could do monoprints, prints, sculpture, painting. He just knew about, he transferred one process over to another process. And I mean, Liz Thompson is an example. She started off in printmaking. I actually started off in painting, but there was so much antagonism to my paintings. And I thought, I had 2 children, how am I going to support them? So I just naturally, without thinking, went into printmaking, which had a wider audience, and people without money bought them a wider thing. But I've gone back more to painting just because of the physical nature of printmaking. It's more of a, it's a bit
quite demanding. It's very hard work. Yes.
Getting back to the buyer should always ask, how was it made and by whom? How was it made? Was it made by the person? And was it the artist? Did he develop the image or the design? Should very ask like you would with a jeweler. You were going to buy, but was this made by the jeweler, or was this manufactured in thousands, or, you know? So you've got to look into it. Every case is sort of different.
Yes, I've noticed just in a late art auction, it's described a print from original artwork. So it's obviously a reproduction from an artwork.
Yeah, well, you can reproduce from an artwork.
Carefully worded.
It was used traditionally because sometimes people did paintings like Hogarth and someone else engraved them and then printed them off.
All right.
They didn't actually engrave the plates. Some artists did, but some artists, they just, you know, those people engraved them themselves, because I think his father was a jeweler. So he
really?
Yeah. So engraved made his own plates. So yes, you've just got to, it's too complicated to go into, every case is different. But I know the photographers, and then I could take one of my original paintings and blow it up so it'll fit over a whole wall with processes. Because, yeah. So therefore.
And what attributes to a good printmaker? What makes a good printmaker? Well,
they're usually those people that are very practical. They're practical process and like there is a crossover between things like jewelry, metal engraving for different things, making things. Even in a way, I always got on with the furniture makers when I was doing woodcuts for some reason.
Yes.
They were, using the material. I used kauri ply, which was very nice to carve. Cut. The surface is a bit soft, so I used to put in glue into it, like gum arabic into it to soak into the surface, or some other more modern epoxy, very liquid epoxy, which I soaked into the plate, and then it made it a bit harder and a bit more resistant to cutting. Okay, do you want me to talk about the works, or do you want to ask any questions?
Please, that'd be great.
Or do you want to ask some more questions about that?
No, about Towards Strangeness. thank you for, we look forward to your comments on the show.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get into talking about monoprinting and things at the as part of it at the end. So Prue and Kyla, you venture into ominous landscapes, things that, I've got a nice term, things appear and reappear. Things appear, fade and reappear. I think it's a line from a poem, magnified apples appear and reappear. He's been picking apples, and Robert Frost, and he's dreaming, and magnified apples appear and reappear. He's sort of dreaming about what he's doing. So you dream about the landscape, so that's quite good. They can be ominous or they can be not so ominous, because it's Nan Mulder's symbols. I quite like the use of symbols, lost symbols. Symbols have a magic quality, sometimes quite nasty, and sometimes they're misused, like the Nazi sign is a good luck symbol. I've got some Kipling books, early Kipling books with the Nazi sign on it with an elephant. And that was before the Nazis adopted it. Yeah, so they changed the meaning, but I quite like the use of
Nan's Alpha and Omega.
Yeah, well, Alpha and meanings of writings. I mean, people were obsessed with hieroglyphics until they actually worked out what it actually meant. But when they didn't know, it was more mysterious. You know, it said this mysterious marks, and no one knew how to read it or what it said, or
Yes.
Yeah. So until they worked out, until the stone was found with the different writings, that they could gradually work it out. The lost meanings always have, even lost architecture, people don't know what they were, and it's always as mysterious if you have lost architecture and things. So that's quite good. Yeah, sorry, I got that mixed up. There's no Lisa. Kathryn Madill.
Yes, the beach walkers and...
Yeah, walking away. I want to talk about that because the figure from the back is quite interesting, because you never know. And my favourite ones are 3 Vermeer paintings have got figures from the back. There's the artist in the studio where he's sitting there and you don't know. He sort of put himself in smart clothes. I'm sure he was only wearing old clothes. And he's painting in the studio. And then there's a woman at the musical thing, and she's very mysterious too. So there's people have used, I've used back figures from the back quite often, because I used to say to my kids, stand there and look at that, and I used to draw them. Or there's one with Anna eating an apple, but she turned around so I could have her eating an apple, because people don't like, and also they get a walking away, or the back view has got a it has got an element of the mysterious about it. Okay.
I've got a sense of quietness, those ones, those prints, sort of walking along the beach.
Well,
and then
you walk away, and of course the
Madill,
yes, Kathryn Madill, I should know. She's used monoprinting, and you said that you thought you printed it more than one. She used different colors. You can paint all the colors. In the States, they call them often transferred paintings, because you work on the plate with printing. The advantage of monoprinting, which people don't realize, is you can do endless alterations. Like if you were doing a watercolor, you can work on quite a big scale if you had the press to print them, but you can also develop a lot, and you can move everything around. And the best examples of those that people don't know about is Degas. He was one of the first ones to use monoprints, and he did, I believe he must have taken the plates and the ink to the brothels, and he did all these scenes that are completely opposite to what we think.
Yes.
And they're quite immediate and rough. And he did all these black and white ones in them, and I think he must have handed the plates to someone to go and print.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what I believe. There must have been a print studio close. I don't know if anyone's gone into research of that, but there's no way he could have painted them so directly. And then you use the back of the brush, and they're fantastic. They have got, well, I think they've got one in Auckland Art Gallery, but the thing has moved, so it's got a slight double image when it was printing.
So where would you find them, Stanley?
Well, I've got a book of them, but you would just find them probably online. And the family destroyed most of the ones that they thought were outrageous, you know, like actual sex scenes. And there's only one, and the plate has been cut in half. There's only one of those exists, but the family, it must have been some, because he didn't have children, but there must have been nieces or nephews or somebody who destroyed them.
Yes.
And, but some of them, there's just a whole group. But then he also did these beautiful landscapes, mystical landscapes, using monoprints, which are almost just there and floating, very mystical. I can only think of probably, no, Turner's more explicit, but Rothko even, they're almost like Rothko. There's areas of color on things, and he did these monoprints, which are quite unknown. You'll find those on WikiArt if you go into some of those, a few of those in Dago's work, but the monoprints, I don't know. You'd have to search out for them, but they artists, some other artists of that era collected them later. Knew about them, collected them, but they're not in general. You might find them on the for sales sites.
Oh, that'd be great. It's always nice to see a print in real, though, isn't it? To see the ink on the paper. Yes,
well, and drawings in real. I've seen the Claude Lorraine wash drawings in the British Museum, which was, in those days, they used to bring them out and just put them in front of you. In France, you couldn't get anywhere near them, but the British Museum was very, very open to people coming, and you could bring out the Claude Lorraine wash drawings.
They have a print room, though, don't they? They have actually a room that they display prints.
Yeah, well, I was when I went there, it was quite a long time ago, Prue, I'm afraid. Right. So
be a long time for the rest of us.
Just those, and also there was another process that Paul Gauguin, because he didn't have printing presses, and he developed a way of rolling ink, and he let it partly dry, and then he drew on the back. So it's a draw on the back and lifted up, and that's transferred drawing. And so he drew on the back and lifted up, I think. And Paul Klee used that too, and then he used watercolor in with it.
All right. So we inked the surface and then put the paper down.
Well, I used to dust them a bit, but you could let them almost dry, and then put paper on, tape it and let it down, and then you can draw on the back, and then you can. There's one in my hall actually, I think. And you used to have to use paper that watercolor will take to. You can't use too soft paper. Like printing paper hasn't got as much glue on it. Watercolor paper's got more glue on it. So
okay.
The ink doesn't soak into it quite as much.
So we'll wrap this up. Thank you. You'll just finalise. What's your advice to someone who's buying prints?
Well, just go into what I said before. Ask who made it, how was it made, and by whom. Yes. That's as simple, isn't it?
Talk to the artist.
Like I say, you would ask the jeweler. Was it made on a machine? Was these diamonds? That's why people like those old hand-cut diamonds and things, because they probably use machines now to cut them and things. So that everything can be computerized, of course. Well, thank you, Stanley. Anything else? No, I think you've been wonderful. Thank you.